Hey, welcome to this video. My name is Aiden Sarah, and if you couldn't tell by the jersey I'm currently wearing, we're talking about the Edmonton Oilers today. Edmonton's most recent game in Vegas, a 3-1 loss. If Edmonton had won that one, it would have been 17 consecutive victories. That would have tied an NHL record that was set in the 1990s by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Unfortunately for the Oilers, their winning streak ends at 16 games. But with those 16 wins in that column, Edmonton now comfortably into a playoff spot in the Pacific Division. They're currently third place. They're 3 points ahead of the Los Angeles Kings for third with 2 games in hand. So for the Edmonton Oilers, it's really been a tale of 2 seasons so far. It's the prior to Kris Knoblauch arrival season and then the after Kris Knoblauch's arrival season. And perhaps nothing is more indicative of that fact than how their captain has performed, Connor McDavid. Prior to Knoblauch's arrival, McDavid in 11 games had 2 goals and 10 points. Over 82 games, that pace equates to 15 goals and 75 points. Now, a 75-point NHLer is nothing to complain about, but this is a Connor McDavid who had 64 goals and 153 points last year, so 75 points by his standards would feel like a vast underperformance. However, since the hiring of Kris Knoblauch, Connor McDavid has played 33 games. He's scored 19 goals and 39 assists for 58 points, an 82-game pace with that stat line. He's scoring 47 goals and 97 assists for 144 points. Connor McDavid, of course, the most important player to the Edmonton Oilers, perhaps the most important player to any NHL team in the league. He is, of course, the reigning Hart Trophy winner, the reigning Art Ross Trophy winner, and the reigning Rocket Richard winner. So Edmonton and Connor McDavid both have turned this ship around since Kris Knoblauch's arrival. Taking a look at that 16-game winning streak, Edmonton were just absolutely unstoppable. They beat the New Jersey Devils and New York Rangers on the road 6-3 and 4-3 respectively. After that, for the remaining 14 games of the winning streak, they conceded 2 goals or less in every single game. Edmonton just absolutely dominating teams offensively, which you know they have the ability to do. But what really was reassuring for the Edmonton Oilers was the fact that they were playing very strong defensive hockey, which was, of course, a question mark. Addressing another question mark, and of course the fall, was Edmonton's goaltending. You saw Jack Campbell have a 1-4-0 start, end up in the AHL. Stuart Skinner struggled a little bit early, but you can make the case that Stuart Skinner has been the best goalie in the NHL in the calendar year 2024 so far. Skinner's played 10 games. He's got a 9-1-0 record and a .950 save percentage that is off the charts. It would be big for the Edmonton Oilers to go into the playoffs with a goaltender that they are confident in, and Stuart Skinner right now looks like he is giving the Oilers nothing to not be confident about. He's been excellent of late, and he's stopping every shot that they needed him to stop. 3-1 loss to the Vegas Golden Knights that you're really not going to fault him on. Of course, that was the one that snapped the 16-game winning streak. So you take a look at the Canucks and the Golden Knights. Turn the clock back to last year. Vegas made a move for Ivan Barbashev around the trade deadline. Barbashev was massive for the Golden Knights in the playoffs, helping them to the Stanley Cup. The Vancouver Canucks already this year have made a blockbuster, huge trade for Elias Lindholm to try and bolster their roster. So the question has to be asked, what should the Edmonton Oilers do heading up to the NHL trade deadline? I've got 3 things in order. Number 1, an insurance policy in net. Now, of course, Stuart Skinner has been fantastic, and there's nothing to show that he might not continue to be just as good as he has been. However, do you want to be relying on Calvin Pickard and Jack Campbell going into the playoffs if, for instance, Skinner is unable to play? Might not be a question of performance, might be a question of health. Regardless, you want an insurance policy in net. You don't want to spend too big on it. There's 3 guys on my mind. Number 1, Marc-Andre Fleury from the Minnesota Wild. Fleury's been Philip Gustafson's backup. Minnesota don't really look like they're going anywhere quickly in terms of an NHL playoff spot. They've got Jesper Wallstedt, who admittedly had a tough NHL debut, but Wallstedt is waiting in the wings for his NHL chance. Minnesota could easily end the season with Gustafsson and Wallstedt as their 2 goaltenders, allowing Marc-Andre Fleury to go to the Edmonton Oilers, back up Stuart Skinner, and give Edmonton that insurance policy in net. If it's not Marc-Andre Fleury, if the asking price is too high, Jake Allen of the Montreal Canadiens or Eric Comrie of the Buffalo Sabres are 2 other guys that I had on my mind as possible options for Edmonton. Number 2 on my list for the Edmonton Oilers is adding some forward depth. Obviously, they just signed Corey Perry as a free agent. Perry played on the second line last game with Leon Draisaitl and Evander Kane. Perry will bring some of that forward forward depth, but the Edmonton Oilers will probably want to add some more of it. Obviously, the big fish on the trade market, number one's got to be Jake Guentzel of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a pending free agent. Pittsburgh obviously are having a tough season, would love to recoup some assets for Guentzel, get something back for him before he maybe walks in free agency. Obviously, no contract in place next year. The other one that's high on a lot of people's lists is Frank Vatrano. Vatrano's had an excellent season with the Anaheim Ducks. However, you have to assume that the asking price for both Guentzel and Vatrano would be pretty high, not to mention the cap hits that they're going to come with. Edmonton might be looking for more a depth forward in the middle six category, somebody you're not going to have to pay as much to get and somebody who's not going to cost as much against the cap. Think Thomas Tatar from the Seattle Kraken, think Anthony Duclair from the San Jose Sharks, and think Dominic Kubalik from the Ottawa Senators. All three of those guys are pending unrestricted free agents as well, which means the respective teams that they're on would probably not have too much of an issue in retaining salary to help the Oilers make it work. Number 3 on my list for the Edmonton Oilers, I've addressed goaltending, I've addressed forwards. Why not go after a depth defenseman? Again, they got Matthias Ekholm at the trade deadline last year. That was a huge acquisition for them. He's been excellent in an Oilers jersey, but do you want to shore up right now? The third pairing, Vincent Desharnais and Brett Kulak. The second pairing is Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci. Do you want somebody who can play in the bottom 4 just to add some stability, add some depth, or even, just as I said with Stuart Skinner, potentially fill in for an injury? On my list for the Edmonton Oilers, I've got Ilya Lyubushkin of the Anaheim Ducks, I've got Kyle Burroughs of the San Jose Sharks, and I've got Nick Jensen of the Washington Capitals. All three of those players are going to cost a little bit, but not too much to get on your team, and all three of them have manageable cap hits for the Oilers. So that's the Oilers season so far, and more importantly, that's a look ahead. What should the Edmonton Oilers do at the trade deadline, and how would you feel about Vegas, Vancouver for Edmonton, rounds 1 and 2 of the NHL playoffs?